The sharp scent of vanilla extract and crushed dreams hung in the air of Cole's Corner Bakery as Lisa stared at the bloodstain on her countertop. It wasn't hers, not yet. Her brother Malik sat slumped against the walk-in freezer, his face a canvas of purple bruises and split skin, mumbling something about easy money at an underground card game in town that spiraled into a 7-figure catastrophe. Before the morning sun could bleed through the cracked windows of South Central Los Angeles, the rumble of engines shattered the silence. 3 black Mercedes SUVs rolled to a stop outside her shop. The first man out wore a suit that cost more than her monthly rent. But it was the second man who made her breath catch. Kang Jae-hyun. He moved like controlled violence, 6 feet 2 inches tall, of muscle and ink wrapped in Italian tailoring. The sleeves of his crisp white shirt were rolled to his elbows, revealing a sleeve of Korean calligraphy that flowed down his left arm like a dark river. When he tilted his head, she caught a glimpse of the black tiger tattooed across his chest, its eyes seeming to track her through the unbuttoned collar. His voice was gravel and silk, a contradiction that made her spine straighten. "Your brother gambled away money that belongs to the Kang Syndicate," he said, his dark eyes locking onto hers with predatory precision. "I don't want this building. I don't want excuses." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar, and something darker. "I want the only thing of value in this room, you." If this story has you hooked, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the next chapter of Lisa and Kang Jae-hyun's dangerous world. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story is traveling across the world. Your support lets me know the story is reaching you. And trust me, this is only the beginning. Lisa's hands curled into fists at her sides, her deep brown skin glowing defiantly against the dying neon sign behind her. She didn't flinch, didn't look away. "If I come with you, he lives. The debt dies with my service, that's the deal." For the first time, something flickered in Kang Jae-hyun's expression, not quite surprise, but interest. His lips didn't move, but his eyes burned. This baker wasn't just collateral. She was a challenge to everything he'd built his empire on. Lisa Cole wasn't supposed to be here. She was supposed to be piping buttercream roses onto a 3-tier wedding cake. She was supposed to be laughing with Miss Jenkins from down the block about her latest batch of peach cobbler. She was supposed to be free. Instead, she stood in the marble-floored foyer of a Beverly Hills estate that could swallow her entire neighborhood, wearing a crisp black and white maid's uniform that felt like a costume for someone else's life. The Kang mansion was all cold luxury white walls, dark wood, and the kind of silence that came from having enough power that no one dared speak unless spoken to. Yvette Monroe, a black woman in her late 40s, with knowing eyes and a New Orleans drawl, appeared beside her like a ghost.
"First rule, baby girl,"
Yvette said quietly, adjusting the collar of Lisa's uniform. "Don't look him in the eye unless he asks you a question. Second rule, don't ever let him see you cry." Lisa's jaw tightened. "I don't plan on crying." Yvette's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Good. You're gonna need that fire." The man who owned everything. Kang Jae-hyun sat in his study, a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows framing the glittering sprawl of Los Angeles behind him. To the world, he was a legitimate businessman, owner of luxury hotels, high-end nightclubs, and a logistics empire that stretched from Seattle to Las Vegas. To those who knew, he was something else entirely. The Kang Syndicate didn't traffic in petty crimes. They controlled supply chains, laundered billions, and made problems disappear with surgical efficiency. Jae-hyun had built his empire on discipline, distance, and the ironclad rule that emotions were liabilities. But the woman in the maid's uniform waiting downstairs was already breaking his rules. He'd expected her to beg, to cry, to collapse under the weight of her brother's stupidity. Instead, she'd stood in her ruined bakery and offered herself like a negotiation, clear-eyed and unshakable. His right-hand man, Han Dae-sung, stood by the door, arms crossed. "Capo, with respect, this is a mistake. Civilians don't belong in the house." Jae-hyun didn't look away from the window. "She's not staying long." "Then why bring her here at all? We could have taken the shop, seized her assets, sent a message to the brother." "Because," Jae-hyun paused, his jaw working, "because I want to see how long she lasts." Han's expression didn't change. but his silence spoke volumes. The first night, Lisa was escorted to a small staff room on the third floor, modest but immaculate, with a single bed, a closet, and a view of the estate's sprawling gardens. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands folded in her lap, and let herself take one deep breath. "You can survive this," she told herself. "For Malik, for Mama's bakery, for yourself." A soft knock broke her thoughts. Yvette stepped inside, carrying a tray with tea and rice. "Eat," she said simply. "Mr. Kang doesn't tolerate sick staff." "Does he tolerate any staff?" Lisa asked dryly. Yvette set the tray down and sat beside her. "He's not cruel for cruelty's sake. But don't mistake silence for kindness. Men like him." She shook her head. "They're used to owning things. Don't let him own you." "I'm not planning on it." "Good." Yvette stood. "He'll summon you soon. First night, he always does. Just to see if you'll run." At 11 p.m., Lisa was called to Jae-hyun's study. The room was dark except for the glow of a laptop and the city lights beyond the glass. He sat behind a massive oak desk, sleeves still rolled, tattoos stark against his skin. He didn't look up when she entered. "Close the door." She did. "Sit." She hesitated, then lowered herself into the chair across from him. Finally, he looked at her, really looked, and the weight of his gaze was suffocating. "Your brother owes me $1.2 million, he said evenly. "At minimum wage, that's roughly 15 years of labor." Lisa's stomach twisted, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm aware." "Are you?" He leaned back, his expression unreadable. "Because from where I'm sitting, you walked into a cage and locked it yourself." "I walked into a deal," she corrected. "And I intend to honor it." Something shifted in his eyes. Curiosity, maybe, or respect. "We'll see." He waved a hand. "You're dismissed." Lisa stood, her legs shaking but her head high. She reached the door before his voice stopped her. "Miss Cole." She turned. "You intrigue me," he said quietly. "That's dangerous. For both of us." Can Lisa survive the lion's den without losing herself, or will Kang Jae-hyun's obsession consume them both? Subscribe now to see sparks fly between the baker and the boss. Lisa's first week at the Kang estate passed in a blur of polished marble and whispered warnings. Every morning began the same way. 5:30 a.m., uniform pressed, hair pulled back into a tight bun that made her scalp ache. Yvette would meet her in the staff kitchen, a gleaming space tucked behind the main house that felt more like a surgical suite than a place to cook and run through the day's tasks with military precision. Mr. Kang takes his coffee at 6:15. Black, no sugar, in the study. Don't knock more than twice. If he doesn't answer, leave it outside the door and walk away. Yvette's voice was low, steady, the kind of tone that came from years of navigating dangerous men. "He works out at 7. Don't go near the gym. He doesn't like to be seen when he's unguarded." Lisa absorbed it all, the rules, the routines, the invisible lines she couldn't cross. But what struck her most wasn't the opulence of the estate, or even the cold efficiency of its operations. It was the silence. The house was enormous, sprawling across what had to be 10,000 square feet, yet it felt empty. No laughter, no music, just the hum of expensive appliances and the soft click of her shoes against imported tile. "Does anyone actually live here?" Lisa asked one morning as she folded linens in the service corridor. "Or is it just him?" Yvette's hands paused over a towel. "He lives here. That doesn't mean he's alive, baby girl. There's a difference." Lisa wanted to press further, but Yvette's expression had already shuddered. Some questions, she was learning, didn't have safe answers. By day 3, Lisa had started to notice the patterns. Jae-hyun kept strange hours, sometimes disappearing for entire days, other times haunting the estate like a ghost, moving from room to room with a restlessness that seemed at odds with his controlled exterior. When he was home, the house felt different, tighter, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. She saw him in pieces, the back of his head as he sat at his desk, shoulders rigid beneath a tailored shirt. His hands, scarred and deliberate, signing documents she couldn't read. Once, she caught a glimpse of him in the hallway late at night. Jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to reveal the full scope of the ink covering his arms. The black tiger on his chest seemed to ripple as he moved, a living thing prowling beneath his skin. He never spoke to her. Not after that first night, but she could feel his attention like a physical weight, tracking her movements even when his eyes were on something else. It was unnerving. It was suffocating. It was intoxicating. On the 5th day, Han Dae-sung cornered her in the East Wing. She'd been dusting the shelves in one of the sitting rooms, another space that looked like a museum exhibit rather than somewhere people actually lived when he appeared in the doorway. He was tall, lean, with the kind of stillness that came from complete control. His eyes were sharp, assessing. "Miss Cole," he said, his English flawless but clipped. "A word." Lisa set down the duster, her pulse quickening. "Of course." He stepped into the room, hands clasped behind his back. "You've been here almost a week. How are you finding the work?" "Manageable," she said carefully. "Good." He moved to the window, looking out over the estate's gardens. "I'll be direct. Mr. Kang has taken an interest in you." Lisa's stomach twisted. "I haven't done anything." "I didn't say you had." Han's tone was neutral, but there was a warning beneath it. "But interest in his world is a currency, and currencies get spent." He turned to face her. "You seem like a smart woman. Smart enough to know that whatever you think is happening here, it's not what you want. Men like him don't have space for softness. They don't have room for distractions. And right now, you're both." "I'm just trying to work off my brother's debt," Lisa said, forcing her voice to stay level. "Are you?" Han's gaze was penetrating. "Because from where I stand, you're playing a dangerous game. Maybe you don't even know you're playing it, but he does. And when he gets bored or when you become a liability, this won't end well for you." He left without waiting for a response. Lisa stood in the empty room, her hands trembling. She wanted to be angry. She wanted to call him paranoid, presumptuous. But the truth was, she had noticed the way Jae-hyun's eyes lingered. The way he seemed to find reasons to be in the same room as her, even when he had no business there. And worse, she'd noticed the way her own pulse quickened when he did. That night, she was summoned to his study again. She found him standing by the window, silhouetted against the city lights, a glass of whiskey in one hand. He didn't turn when she entered. "Do you know what I do, Miss Cole?" His voice was quiet, almost conversational. "Run a logistics company," she said, parroting the line she'd heard Yvette use. He laughed a low, dark sound that sent a shiver down her spine. "Is that what they told you?" "It's what everyone says." "Everyone lies." He turned, finally, and the intensity in his eyes pinned her in place. "I move things that shouldn't be moved. I make problems disappear. I control supply chains that governments pretend don't exist." He took a slow sip of his drink. "I am not a good man, Miss Cole. I want you to understand that." "Why?" The word slipped out before she could stop it. "Because you look at me like I might be." He set the glass down, moving closer. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that she could smell cedar and smoke, and that's dangerous. Lisa's heart pounded. "I don't look at you any kind of way." "Liar." His lips curved, not quite a smile, but something sharper. "You're a terrible liar. It's refreshing." "I should go." "Stay." It wasn't loud, but it was absolute. "I want to ask you something." She forced herself to meet his gaze.
"What?"
"Why did you really offer yourself? For your brother?" He tilted his head. "Or because you wanted an escape?" The question hit like a slap. "My brother." "Your brother is a coward who threw you to the wolves to save his own skin," Jae-hyun said flatly. "So I'll ask again. Why are you really here?" Lisa's throat tightened. Because Malik was all she had left. Because their mother's bakery was the only thing tethering her to a life that made sense. Because she didn't know how to be anything other than the person who fixed things, who carried the weight, who stayed when everyone else ran. But she couldn't say any of that, not to him. "Because it was the right thing to do," she said finally. He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stepped back. Go. Before I change my mind about what's right. She didn't wait for him to say it twice. Over the next few days, the tension became unbearable. Jae-hyun started appearing in places he had no reason to be: the kitchen while she prepped his meals, the service corridor while she carried linens, the library while she dusted shelves he never touched. He never spoke, just watched, waiting for something she couldn't name. Yvette noticed, of course. You need to be careful, she said one evening as they folded laundry together. He's circling. And when men like him circle, it's because they've already decided what they want. I'm not interested, Lisa said firmly. Doesn't matter. Yvette's voice was sad. Interest only goes one way in this house. And baby girl, you're already caught. That night, Lisa couldn't sleep. She stood at the window of her small room, staring out at the gardens bathed in moonlight, and wondered how long she could keep pretending she wasn't drowning. Somewhere below, in the dark heart of the estate, Kang Jae-hyun sat in his study and asked himself the same question. If you felt the heat between Lisa and Jae-hyun, hit that subscribe button right now. Don't miss the moment the ice finally melts. Like and sub for more. The crystal chandeliers of the Beverly Wilshire Ballroom threw fractured light across a sea of designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. Lisa had never seen so much wealth concentrated in one space, old money mingling with new power, politicians shaking hands with men whose fortunes were built on blood and silence. She moved through the crowd like a ghost, carrying champagne flutes on a silver tray, her black service uniform marking her as invisible to everyone except the one person whose gaze she could feel burning into her spine. Kang Jae-hyun stood near the bar, a vision of controlled elegance in a midnight black suit that made his tattooed hands look even more dangerous. Seo Min-jae clung to his arm like a declaration of ownership, her crimson dress cut low enough to draw every eye in the room. She was beautiful in the way poisonous things often were, all sharp edges wrapped in silk. Champagne, Min-jae said, without looking at Lisa, her voice dripping with dismissal. Lisa set a glass on the table beside her, careful not to make eye contact. Yvette's rules echoed in her head. Be a shadow, don't engage, survive. But Min-jae's perfectly manicured hand shot out, fingers wrapping around Lisa's wrist with surprising strength. Wait. Her smile was all teeth. You're new to service work, aren't you? I can tell by the way you hold the tray. Like you're uncomfortable being beneath people. Lisa's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice level. I'm learning, Miss Seo. Min-jae's grip tightened, nails digging into skin. Min-jae. Jae-hyun's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Let her go. For a moment, something ugly flickered across Min-jae's face. Rage, humiliation, fear. Then she released Lisa with a laugh that sounded rehearsed. Of course, darling. I was only teasing. But her eyes promised retribution as Lisa stepped back into the crowd. The gala continued its carefully choreographed dance of power and pretense. Lisa tried to focus on her duties, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched not just by Jae-hyun, but by Min-jae and several other syndicate members whose faces she'd learned to recognize over the past 3 weeks, faces that carried violence like cologne. She was refilling glasses near the terrace doors when she saw him. Melik, her brother, stood just outside the glass, half hidden by marble columns, his face bruised and desperate. He caught her eye and gestured frantically toward the gardens. Lisa's heart dropped into her stomach. No, not here. Not now. She slipped through the terrace doors, the cool Los Angeles night air hitting her face like a slap. What the hell are you doing here? She hissed. I'm getting you out, Malik said, grabbing her arm. His eyes were wild, unfocused. I got help, Lisa. Real help. These guys, they're gonna take down Kang and... Malik, stop. Fear closed around her throat like a fist. What guys? What did you do? The first gunshot answered her question. It cracked through the night like thunder, followed immediately by screams from inside the ballroom. Lisa's training from her nursing certification kicked in before conscious thought she hit the ground, pulling Malik down with her. More shots rang out, systematic and controlled. This wasn't random violence. This was tactical. West entrance is compromised, someone shouted in Korean. Rival crew, Los Sangres, they're inside. Malik's face went pale. I didn't know they were Lisa, I swear, I thought. You thought what? She wanted to scream, to shake him, but survival instinct overrode rage. Where did you bring them in? The service entrance, near the kitchens. I just wanted to... A figure appeared in the terrace doorway, Han Dae-sung. His normally stoic face twisted with fury and something else. Concern. Miss Cole, inside. Now. Lisa didn't argue. She let Han pull her back into the ballroom, which had transformed into controlled chaos. Guests were being ushered towards secure exits by men in suits whose jackets now bulged with visible weapons. Near the center of the room, Jae-hyun stood with 3 of his enforcers, his expression colder than she'd ever seen it. Then she saw Min-jae. The woman stood near the bar, and despite the pandemonium around her, she was smiling. Actually, smiling. Her eyes found Lisa's across the room, and in that moment, Lisa understood with perfect clarity. This was planned. Not the gang, but my punishment. Capo! One of the enforcers shouted. They're pushing through the west corridor. The explosion of gunfire was closer now, erupting from somewhere near the kitchens, exactly where Malik had led them. Han shoved Lisa toward a pillar. Stay down and don't move. But she couldn't stop watching Jae-hyun. He moved with lethal precision, pulling a gun from inside his jacket, sleek, black, an extension of his will. His eyes swept the room, calculating exits and angles, and then they landed on her. Time fractured. She saw the Los Sangres gunman emerge from the service hallway, saw his weapon rise, saw the barrel track across the room toward where she crouched. She saw Jae-hyun's expression shift from calculation to something she'd never seen on his face before, pure, unfiltered fear. He moved before she could scream. His body collided with hers, arms wrapping around her as he twisted, putting himself between her and the shooter. The impact of the bullet hitting him was both silent and deafening. A wet, meaty sound, followed by his sharp intake of breath. They hit the ground together, his weight pressing her into the marble floor. Don't move, he gritted out, his hand pressed against her head, holding her down as gunfire erupted around them. The fight was brutal and brief. Jae-hyun's men were professionals, trained for exactly this scenario. Within 90 seconds, the Los Sangres gunmen were either dead or fleeing. Within 2 minutes, the ballroom was secured. Within 3, Lisa was kneeling over Jae-hyun as his blood pooled across the pristine white marble. Someone call... she started, but Han cut her off. No hospitals. Can't risk it. He's been shot! Lisa's hands were already moving, ripping open Jae-hyun's shirt. The fabric tore easily, revealing the full expanse of his tattooed chest, the black tiger snarling across his heart, the Korean calligraphy flowing down his ribs, and beneath it all, old scars, knife wounds, bullet wounds, a roadmap of violence that had nearly killed him before. The current wound was high on his left shoulder, through and through. The bullet had missed major arteries, but he was losing blood fast. First aid kit. Lisa snapped at Han. Now. And get me towels, bottled water, and someone find me a sewing kit or fishing line. Anything I can use for sutures. Han stared at her. You know how to... I have a nursing certificate. Move. Her hands were steady as she worked, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. She packed the wound, applied pressure, and when Han returned with supplies, she irrigated and examined the entry and exit points with a calmness that felt borrowed from someone else. Jae-hyun's eyes never left her face. You should have run, he said, his voice strained but clear. And let you bleed out on this overpriced floor? Not a chance. She threaded the curved needle Han had somehow produced. This is going to hurt. His lips curved into something almost like a smile. Not the first time. She could see that now. The scars told stories, a knife slash across his ribs that had nearly gutted him, a bullet wound near his spine that should have paralyzed him, burn marks on his forearms that looked like torture. Each one was a testament to survival, inked over with tigers and calligraphy, as if he could rewrite pain into power. Who did this to you? She asked quietly, making the first suture. He winced but didn't look away. People who don't exist anymore. 20 minutes later, the wound was closed, bandaged, and Jae-hyun was sitting up despite her protests. Han had cleared the ballroom except for core syndicate members. Min-jae was conspicuously absent. "Find her," Jae-hyun said to Han, his voice deadly calm. "I want to know exactly who she contacted in the last 48 hours. "Already on it, Capo." Jae-hyun's gaze shifted to Lisa, and something in his expression made her chest tighten. "Your brother?" "Being held in the West Wing," Han supplied. "He claims he didn't know Los Sangres would." "He didn't," Lisa said quickly. "He's an idiot. But he wouldn't have brought them here if he knew. His ignorance nearly got you killed." "His ignorance nearly got you killed," she corrected. "Why did you—" She couldn't finish the question. Jae-hyun reached out, his scarred, tattooed hand cupping her jaw with surprising gentleness. His thumb brushed across her cheek, and she realized she was shaking. "Because the thought of losing you," he said quietly, "was more terrifying than the bullet." The admission hung between them like a live wire. "Capo," Han started, but Jae-hyun raised a hand. "Clear the room, all of you." When they were alone, surrounded by shattered glass and bloodstains, Jae-hyun pulled Lisa closer. "You saved my life tonight. You saved mine first. Then I suppose we're even." But his eyes said they were anything but. "Except now I owe you something I never thought I'd owe anyone." "What's that?" "The truth." He exhaled slowly, wincing as the movement pulled at his stitches. "About what I am, what this life means, and why keeping you here might be the most selfish thing I've ever done." Lisa's hand found his, fingers threading through his despite the blood, despite everything.
Then tell me.
The stakes just turned deadly. Will Malik's recklessness cost Lisa everything? Subscribe and like to find out if they survive the night. Subscribe for the next chapter. The morning after the gala massacre, Lisa sat in Jae-hyun's private study, watching him move carefully around the room, his shoulder bound in fresh bandages beneath a crisp white shirt. He'd refused pain medication, claiming he needed to think clearly. She suspected he simply didn't want to appear weak, even in front of her. Especially in front of her. "Min-jae left the country 6 hours ago," Han reported from the doorway, his expression grim. "Private jet to Seoul. We traced the communications. She's been feeding information to Los Sangres for 3 weeks. The attack was meant to look like retaliation for our expansion into their territory, but the timing was too precise. She wanted chaos, during the gala specifically. Because I would be there," Lisa said quietly. Jae-hyun's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his skin. "Yes. What will you do to her?" The silence that followed was heavy enough to suffocate. Finally, Jae-hyun turned to face her fully, and the cold fury in his eyes made her understand exactly why men feared the Black Tiger. "She's been exiled from every syndicate operation in the Western Hemisphere. Her family has disowned her to avoid association. In our world, that's a death sentence. She just doesn't know she's already dead." Lisa should have felt satisfied. Instead, she felt hollow. "And my brother?" "Downstairs, unharmed." Jae-hyun moved toward his desk, each step controlled despite the pain she knew he must be feeling. "Han, give us the room." When they were alone, Jae-hyun pulled a manila envelope from his desk drawer and set it between them. Lisa stared at it, her heart beginning to race. "Open it." Her hands trembled as she undid the clasp. Inside was a legal document, dense with text and official seals. It took her a moment to understand what she was reading. Then the words crystallized. "Deed transfer. Property rights. Cole's Corner Bakery." "I don't understand," she whispered. "Your brother's debt is cleared. The bakery is yours again, free and clear. I've also transferred funds to cover 6 months of operating expenses and any repairs needed." His voice was carefully neutral, but his eyes, those dark, watchful eyes, betrayed something deeper. "You're free to go." Lisa looked up sharply. "Just like that?" "Just like that. After everything, the deal, the debt, the—" She gestured helplessly at the bandage beneath his shirt. "You almost died for me last night." "I know." He moved closer, perching on the edge of the desk so they were nearly eye level. "Which is precisely why you need to leave. I don't want to leave. The words escaped before she could stop them, raw and honest. Something cracked in Jae-hyun's carefully maintained composure. Lisa. Her name on his lips sounded like both prayer and curse. Do you understand what you're saying? What staying would mean? I'm saying I see you. She stood, closing the distance between them until she could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. Not the Black Tiger, not the syndicate boss. I see the man who reads psychology textbooks at midnight. The man who donates to cancer foundations and orphanages. The man who took a bullet for a baker from South Central because somewhere along the way, I stopped being a transaction and became something else entirely. His hand rose to cup her face, thumb tracing the curve of her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. You became everything. Then why are you sending me away? Because I love you too much to keep you in this world. The admission seemed to cost him something vital. You deserve sunlight and safety, not shadows and violence. You deserve a life where you don't have to stitch bullet wounds in ballrooms or wonder if the man you... He stopped, drew a shaking breath. If the man you care for will come home alive. Lisa caught his hand, pressed it firmly against her cheek. What if I told you I don't want that man to stay in this world either? Jae-hyun went very still. What are you saying? I'm saying you have a choice too. She turned her head, pressed a kiss to his scarred palm. You've built an empire on fear and control. But I've seen your study, Jae-hyun. I've seen the business plans for legitimate ventures, the investments in legal enterprises. You're already halfway out of this life, you just haven't taken the final step. It's not that simple. The syndicate, the families, the obligations. Are they worth more than this? She placed her hand over his heart, feeling it thunder beneath her palm. Then us. He closed his eyes, and for the first time since she'd met him, Kang Jae-hyun looked vulnerable. They'll call it weakness, betrayal. Let them. You'll be too busy learning to bake croissants to care. That startled a laugh out of him, rough and unpracticed, but genuine. Croissants? I'm not carrying that business alone. If you want me, you work for it, literally. He opened his eyes, and the intensity there stole her breath. If I walk away from this life, if I choose you over everything I've built, I need you to understand there's no going back. The syndicate will have to be dismantled carefully, transitioned to legitimate operations. It could take years. There will be people who won't forgive me for leaving, who might come after us. Then we face them together. She stepped closer, until their foreheads touched. I'm not asking you to be someone else. I'm asking you to be who you actually are beneath all the armor and ink. The man who's been trying to escape this life since before I ever walked into it. His arms came around her carefully, mindful of his injury, pulling her close enough that she could feel every tense line of his body. You're asking me to trust you with everything. Yes. And I'm trusting you with the same. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. But I need time too. I need to rebuild my bakery, reconnect with my community, remember who I am outside of these walls, and you need time to extract yourself from the syndicate without getting us both killed. So what are you proposing? I go home. I reopen Cole's Corner. You start the process of going legitimate. Really legitimate. Not just the public facade. And when you're ready, when you've truly left this world behind, she smiled, soft and certain. You come find me, not as a boss, not as the Black Tiger, just as Jae-hyun, a man who wants a simple life with a woman who makes terrible puns about bread. You've never made a pun about bread in my presence. That's because I was terrified you'd have me killed. Give me 6 months, and I'll make you regret ever meeting me. He kissed her, then slow and deep and achingly tender, tasting of coffee and promises. When they finally broke apart, his forehead rested against hers, both of them breathing hard. 6 months, he said roughly. I'll dismantle everything. Transfer operations to Han for the transition to legitimate business. Cut ties with the families. And then I'm coming for you, Lisa Cole, and I'm never letting you go. I'm counting on it. 3 weeks later, Lisa stood in front of Cole's Corner Bakery, staring at the newly repaired windows and fresh coat of paint. Malik hovered beside her, subdued and sober in a way she'd never seen him before. I'm sorry, he said for the 100th time. For all of it. The gambling, The debt. Almost getting you killed. I know. She squeezed his hand. And you're going to spend the next year proving you mean it by actually working here. 6 a.m. shifts, Malik. Every single day. He groaned, but nodded. I deserve that. You deserve worse. But I'm feeling generous. Inside, Yvette was already prepping the kitchen, her hands moving with practiced efficiency as she mixed dough. She'd followed Lisa back to South Central without hesitation, claiming she was too old for Beverly Hills anyway. Lisa's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The tiger is learning to purr. Give me time. She smiled, typed back. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. 6 months and 2 weeks later, the bell above Cole's Corner's door chimed just as Lisa was closing up for the evening. She looked up from the register and froze. Jae-hyun stood in the doorway, and he looked different. His hair was longer, less severely styled. He wore jeans, actual jeans, and a simple black Henley that showed the edges of his tattoos at his collar and wrists. But it was his eyes that had truly changed. The cold calculation was gone, replaced by something warmer. Something like hope. I heard you're hiring, he said. Lisa's heart climbed into her throat. Position's pretty entry level. Long hours, terrible pay, bosses demanding. Sounds perfect. He stepped inside, letting the door close behind him. I should warn you though, I have a criminal record, extensive tattoos, 0 baking experience. Deal breakers for most employers. And for you? She walked around the counter, closing the distance between them until she could see the silver scar on his shoulder where her stitches had been. For me, you're exactly what I've been waiting for. He pulled her into his arms, and she fit against him like she'd been designed for exactly this purpose. The syndicate's dissolved. All operations are legitimate now, run by people I trust. I'm a free man, Lisa. Completely, utterly free. So what now? Now? He kissed her forehead, her temple, the corner of her mouth. You already are. She pulled him down for a proper kiss, tasting freedom and future and the promise of morning sunlight through bakery windows. Welcome home, Jae-hyun. Outside, Los Angeles hummed with its usual chaos sirens, and traffic and 10 million dreams colliding. But inside Cole's Corner Bakery, 2 people who'd survived violence and betrayal and impossible odds stood wrapped in each other's arms, betting everything on the most dangerous gamble of all. Love. And for once, the Black Tiger had finally found something worth more than an empire. Love truly is the ultimate gamble. Did Jae-hyun win or lose it all? Like this story and subscribe for more heart-pounding romance. Like and sub for more stories.